Hey everyone, welcome to this AMA with Brent Peterson presented by Cloudways, of course. In this AMA, we're going to be talking about Magento, performance, e-commerce, and the latest Magento version, of course. So we have a few questions from our audience that we will be asking Brent. Brent, why don't we start with a short introduction? Tell us more about yourself, Brent.
Sure. My name is Brent Peterson. I'm the founder of Wagento Commerce. We're a technical solution partner with what was Magento and now Adobe Commerce. And I'm a 5 times Magento master. I got involved in the Magento community in 2009, and by 2010, they'd asked me to help volunteer with the Magento forums. I had at the time asked so many questions and then answered so many questions that they figured I knew something, which I don't know if I know anything still, but I've remained active in the community. I'm on the committee for the membership at Magento Association, and it's still very impassioned with Magento and now Adobe Commerce.
All right. Don't be too humble, Brent. I know you know a lot of stuff. So yeah, we're gonna put you on the screen, and we're gonna be starting off with a few questions. So just to take you through the format, and everyone who is watching this, to take you through the format as well. That so we have a few questions. We're gonna make sure that we take as many questions as we can, because obviously we are time bound as well, and obviously Brent has a lot more things to do in his life. So we're going to make sure that we take around 6 to 7 questions, as many as we can, and we make sure that Brent is answering to all of those questions one by one. So starting off with the first question, Brent, that we had just received from our user. As a freelancer looking to work in e-commerce, right? Can you provide more information on product information management and how it relates to e-commerce jobs?
All right, so I'm assuming they meant PIM, Project Information Management Systems, like Akineo or SalesLayer. And product information management systems are becoming more and more imperative, especially at the enterprise level. But with Akineo and its open source product, it allows anybody who is managing a store to start a PIM and attach it to your Magento store. This allows you to create workflows and how you want your products to go onto your web store. And it also allows you to create workflows that will allow products to go to different places. So if you think about a single point of truth for your product, the product information management system would be that point of truth, and the endpoint would be your Magento store. But another endpoint could be your e-commerce store, or it could be another store in another country in another language. The other thing that's really important in terms of product information management is that you can use that for your print catalogs. And for those younger people in the audience who don't know what a print catalog is, it's a document that you got a long time ago in the mail that was actually printed on paper. Nowadays, everything comes in an email, but a long time ago, we used to print things out. So product information management systems, and especially I'll highlight Akineo, which is built on PHP, and Symfony is very similar to what is used for your programming languages inside of Magento. This will allow you as a developer to both work in Akineo and in Magento and work on that specific integration point that Akineo gives us for Magento to move that product information back and forth. As a developer, you want to know where that single point of truth is and how that single point of truth works with wherever else that product data exists. So if we think about what happens in Magento and what things are going to be modified in Magento, certainly your attributes and your tags and your categories are something that are managed in Magento, but they could also be managed in an external system. So it's a big subject, and it's a little bit outside of what Magento does, but it
Yeah.
certainly is very relatable in today's world.
All right, moving on to something that is very much related to Magento, obviously, and I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to hearing from you about this particular topic. It's about 2.4.6. So, can you discuss the front end improvements in the tech stack for Magento 2.4.6? Will these improvements result in faster site speed? Obviously, people are concerned about performance, and what is the benchmark for measuring this speed?
Yeah, so there are performance increases, and I think we should post the release notes because it's quite lengthy from Adobe. But specifically, there's enhancements on the PWA Studio, which includes tools for developing better tools for progressive web apps, which is headless, right? So that there's going to be always going to be enhancements in that. Optimized image loading is another one of the things that's included now. That includes performance for lazy loading and things like that. That are going to be improvements on how your front end will load. Um, Cart and checkout experience is going to be improved in the newest version. Uh, Product recommendations is also improved, and then content staging if you're using Adobe Commerce. Page Builder has also been improved. The reality is to get better Lighthouse speeds, if you're using Luma in your Magento store, you are going to struggle in getting very good Lighthouse speeds. And I didn't mean to say, I mean, you're really gonna struggle on getting your performance up there using Luma. Luma is a very old technology that still comes with Adobe Commerce and Magento. And Luma is something that let's just say it's 10 years old. It uses a lot of things, but the biggest part of that is that it is loading everything every time on every page. And there's not a lot of ways around that. In my discussions with a lot of our other Magento community members, it has taken more time to improve site speed on Luma than it would be to strip Luma out and add a new theme like the Hoofa theme, which is one of the most popular now, to improve site speed. What we've seen by removing Luma completely and adding in a new theme is that you are going to go from your typical load time on Luma is around 6 seconds, and out of the box you may get 4, but once you start doing things to your website, you're looking at 6 to 10 second load times. With the Hoofa theme, you are going to see a sub 2 second load time. You're also going to see an increased productivity rate from developers. Once you know Tailwind and the other technologies that are with coming with the Hoofa theme, you are going to find that it takes much less time to get those new features to market than it did trying to work on the Luma theme. So the big thing I would say as a developer is to explore what's out there. There are a few other themes out there that are working not based on the Luma theme. And the tricky part about this is every theme that you've purchased or have availability prior to a year ago is almost always based on Luma and Blank, and those two themes now are very old and very slow. So I would encourage you to go and look at what's out there in the market. Or Hoofa, it's hyva.io, has a great community that's helping to build out robust new features that will work on both Adobe Commerce and Magento Commerce.
Well, Brent, moving on. I mean, adding to this question. I mean, you mentioned Luma and the older technologies. Just to add on to this question, why do you think people insist on keep using those older technologies when newer and better ones are already available? Is it because developers have gotten comfortable with the older stuff, regardless of the fact that it doesn't have the same performance as it used to?
I would give a little bit of pushback on insisting to use it. It is what comes with it, and it is a little bit of it is some work to remove Luma and put in a new theme. So
Okay.
there's probably some laziness in there, but there's also a budget constraint from clients.
Okay.
So the more that it is being done, the easier it gets. And I know I'm going to speak a little bit for like Mage OS, which is going to be a branch of Magento. The ultimate goal is there would be a version of Magento that does not include Luma at all. And out of the box, you could
Mhm.
install a native theme that's fast. I know I didn't talk a lot about PWA, but there is a little bit of uh, I'm not going to say controversy, but PWA is it can be complex. You have to run two tech stacks and you have to maintain two different versions of a tech stack. So PWA Studio is something that I started with, but is it going to be something that people are going to want to use in the long term? And in addition, does PWA Studio give you all those extra enhancements and speed performance that you could get from a monolithic deployment of your Magento store? So there's a little bit of back and forth, and where is PWA Studio going? There has not been a lot of new features that have come from the PWA Studio team, and I will add that PWA Studio is still not fully covered for Adobe Commerce. So if you intend on building your new website on Adobe Commerce, and I think we're going to get to some B2B conversations later, it doesn't always pay to start with PWA Studio unless you're fully invested in a React front end and a whole, React team that is going to be building that single page application that PWA Studio resides on.
All right. So you would say it's a combination of, just to answer that my question, it's a combination of budget, technicalities into moving to a different theme or to a different technology, and obviously a bit of laziness in there as well. Moving on to, yeah, Brent, you had something to say?
No, go ahead.
All right. So moving on to the next question that we just had, it's around strategies and optimization techniques for improving Magento performance. Obviously, again, another question on performance. It's a big topic, obviously, including indexing and SQL queries.
Okay, so those are two different subjects, and so maybe we could talk about some strategies. Okay, so we have two parts of this, right? Indexing SQL queries are backend, and it doesn't really have anything to do with Lighthouse, although the end result of a slow backend means you're going to have a slow front end. But you cannot diagnose a slow backend through Google Lighthouse. It is a result of a slow backend, but you don't know why it's slow based on Google Lighthouse. I just want to clarify that first, right? There's two parts of this, right? And there's also the indexing of Magento, which is different than the indexing of Google. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with what we're talking about here. So let's first go into how we can improve and how we can diagnose slowness in our Magento backend. Which if anybody used to see that we made t-shirts called Keep Calm and Clear Cache. And what did we mean by that? Well, cache is very sticky in Magento, and cache is your savior. So the first thing, if you're looking at, and I would encourage you to go to web page speed test and just run a test on a Magento store. If you see your time to first byte is more than, say, 0.02 or 0.2 seconds, your time to first byte should always be less than a second. If it's greater than a second, then your caching is not turned on. Cache should always bring your time to first byte immediately. So knowing that will tell you from a front end perspective how well your site is performing. Then as we go on the front end into what does a Google Lighthouse score mean, we can really dig into that. But there's a couple of aspects. There's LCP, which is landing. I'm not going to know all the things off the top of my head right now. But anyway, so Google Lighthouse score incorporates some specific requirements that will help you to improve the speed of your site. If we look at how we can improve the back end, which is separate from your front end, and if we think about two of this in the PWA Studio example, your back end is completely separated from your front end. So the only tie there is your GraphQL and REST API integration to make sure the front end and the back end work. So on the back end, there are some great tools that have been used for a long time that help you diagnose your slow points in Magento. The default tool that I recommend using is New Relic. New Relic is free, so if you're using the free version, it'll save your data for 2 weeks, and you can easily identify slow points in your Magento store. I would add on that it always helps to do load testing on your Magento store. because there are certain slow points that will come up outside of your normal traffic. So, for example, we talked about slow SQL queries. The majority of the time, a slow SQL query is not from your SQL server. It is from the PHP code that is executing that query. And maybe it's executing something that it takes too long to return, but it most likely means that somebody has done a query using the Magento framework, PHP, to generate that query. And there's a lot of data that's being returned, and it doesn't have enough time to return that data. So a great example is using layered navigation and wanting to load every single attribute on every single product and every single on a category landing page. So if you want to really use your layered navigation, and let's just say you have 100,000 products, and each of your products has 20 attributes, your layered navigation is going to go through those attributes that have drop downs, and it's going to show on your left side, right? But it also has to index that entire set, and it has to return it to your page. And then it has to do it on all 100,000 to make that layered navigation work. So having that huge data set, and perhaps if it's not cached, every time you load that, it's going to go back to your server and it's going to try to regenerate that page. Every time you make a change, it's going to regenerate that page. So think about how you're using your cache, and then how you're using your pages, and how those pages are being displayed, and how often you're refreshing that cache, as well as re-indexing, is going to help you to understand the performance you're having on each of those specific things. But you can dig in. The point of this is you can dig into New Relic to discover out of that what is the slowest part of that, and how can you improve it. The other thing that was part of Magento, but is still a great tool, is Blackfire. That'll help you determine some more of your debugging inside of Magento. There are code quality tools as a developer that I would recommend. So PHP Code Snifter, there's PHP MD. If you're not using a great IDE that includes a Magento plugin, I would really recommend that. And I'm not a developer anymore. I haven't been a developer for 10 years, so I haven't used all these firsthand, but I've certainly talked to a lot of developers that are using them. Debugging tools such as Xdebug, Xendebugger are great for what you're doing. And again, there's a lot of tools, and I would encourage you to be in the Magento community and ask those questions. Mark Schust, Joseph Maxwell are great resources as well in our community to help you to understand how to use those tools and how to improve them. I know Joseph Maxwell has the Art of Debugging book that helps you understand, as a Magento developer, how you can be a better developer by using debugging. Version control, I think, is a no-brainer. Everybody should be using Git, and everybody should be committing their code to Git and then using branching and those other things. If you're using Adobe Commerce Cloud, you will get a Git repository by default, and you will have branches based on how you want to see that, which allows you to work on different features at different times, aside from what everybody else is doing. And then I'll just close out on automating as much as you can in that. So think about when you deploy your site, the old way of doing it would be manually deploying it. But with Git Magento 2, we have to re-index, recompile, re-index after. So that can be a little bit more time consuming. All this can be automated with using something like Jenkins or Travis CI that will help you as a developer automate all these processes. You can also add post commit hooks that will allow you to automate some of that testing. And I didn't get into a lot of there's a Magento testing framework that everybody should be using as they're building new Magento features. Building out those tests and those unit tests inside of Magento is imperative in making sure that your code will live better over time into the future. I know that was a really long answer, but it was a big question.
That was perfect. Brent, I think my colleague Jyoti here has a question for you.
Hi. Continue with the same question. I would like to ask, like, the indexing process in the Magento takes a lot of time to perform some specifically into some when there are 500, 200 more than products. Like, someone can add it to shopping cart or into the backend if there are thousands of products and they are performing some bulk operations into it. So the performance, they say they faced a lot of like performance issues into it. So, could you some highlight some key techniques to improving those and including of SQL queries? It takes a lot of time to save up any product or any performing or any deleting operations into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going into user specific questions or client specific questions on what takes a long time and why it takes a long time. I would first encourage you to, when you're doing an index, run no, as a very simple solution, run New Relic to figure out what is taking a long time to complete that index. I have seen sites that have a lot of SKUs take a long time to index in Magento. So that is definitely something that is that's very common inside of Magento. And keep calm and clear cache is one of those little statements that we came up with 10 years ago that highlighted the fact that indexing can take a while and it can bring your site down. In the past, we've seen indexing take as long as 12 hours. So in the back end of Magento, you have some options of doing index on demand or index on schedule. Typically, index on schedule means that you are going to have your data indexed on a scheduled basis that will allow it to happen overnight, say, when it's not at peak times. What happens if you are doing a lot of updates during the day and you want to see those updates instantly? You're going to have to index that site to make sure that your products are displayed. So the challenge comes with the more products that you have and the more store views that you have, and let's just say you have more attributes that need to get indexed into that. That's where your challenge comes. But it is a case by case basis. I know that there are specific improvements in the newest version, so I would encourage you to make sure you're on the newest version of PHP. If you can go to PHP 8, that would be fantastic. But simply just the newest version of Magento has incrementally increased the performance of your site over time. So if you haven't tested your index, if you're on 2.4.3, you could be a lot slower than you're going to be on 2.4.6 or 2.4.2. Those incremental updates inside of Adobe Commerce and Magento are going to give you an exponentially larger increase in performance over time. So just to quickly answer, start with New Relic and look and see what is taking a long time to index. And if you have a lot of attributes that are being put in there, or you have a lot of products, that's just something you're going to have to work on over time. And again, I'm just going to go back to SQL. Typically, a SQL slow SQL or a sleeping SQL process is a result of a PHP call that's being used or overused.
All right, thank you so much for that, Brent. Moving on to our next question, it's about, will Magento come with a backend for front end BFF layer?
Yeah, that was a good question, and it was something that I wasn't 100% familiar with. But the good news is that there is going to be a BFF layer, and it is not best friends for life, but maybe it is if you're a front end developer. Um, they will be introducing a back end for front end in future releases, and this should improve the performance and flexibility of your Magento front end. It is specifically separating out the front and the back code. So I would lean towards looking at what documentation is coming out of Adobe Commerce in terms of BFF, and follow Adobe closely on what they're going to be doing.
All right. So we have another question about, again, 2.4.6. People are very curious to know about it. How does Magento 2.4.6 compare to other e-commerce platforms in the B2B market? And is the developer talent base increasing or decreasing?
Okay, so there's two parts of that question, and I'll first take on B2B. There are there are two specific notes in the release candidate or in the release notes for B2B and 2.4.6. So purchase orders are the first with GraphQL schema covered on a B2B part of that. And then purchase order rules are also part of the new release of 2.4.6. So aside from that, then, I would still argue that the B2B plugin for Adobe Commerce it exceeds any other B2B plugin on the market right now. It is very rich in features and it is also very scalable, and it allows you as a developer or you as a merchant to know that you can modify it to fit your specific needs. I can say that we at Wagento were the very first to launch the B2B store in before it even came out with a local company in Minnesota that used it alongside Microsoft Dynamics, and we were able to tie those two together, having specific customer groups and specific customer pricing, using all those built-in B2B features that allowed customers to really be able to shop the way they would like to see from a business to business standpoint. If it's just requisition lists or quick order forms or customized pricing structures based on users, or even the hierarchy that's built in for when users are going to buy something, they have to get approval from somebody upstream. All those features are built in, and a lot of those things you will not find on other platforms. And the nice thing, again, I'm just going to lean in on how well Magento how well you are able to modify Magento. It allows you to make whatever you need inside of Magento because you own that code and you can customize that code and you can make that code what you want it to make. All right, so the second part was about the availability of developers. Is that correct? The talent pool?
Yes.
Yeah, so this has been a challenge since Magento 2 came out, the talent pool. I'm gonna point out Ahmedabad, India as probably the biggest hub for Magento developers. It is a great place to be a Magento developer and find a job. There's a lot of agencies in Ahmedabad that do Magento development, and there's a great talent pool of Magento developers in India as well as other parts of the world. So I mentioned Joseph Maxwell earlier with his tests and his practice tests and his study documentation. I would encourage you to go and look up Swift Otter to find out more if you're interested in learning and getting certified on Adobe Commerce. That his tests will help you as a developer get certified on Adobe Commerce. There is a sort of a entry test, not an entry test, but something. So let's just say you have PHP experience but no Magento experience. That allow you as a Magento developer to be able to start working on Magento. Let's just say within 6 months, or if you're more in tune with that, maybe even sooner. But he has practice tests that allow you to take those before you take that real test that you'll have to pay for from Adobe. Adobe has a number of different tests that you can take as a developer. So there's a professional test, a master test, and there's an architect test that help you to have different levels of knowledge in Magento. But more importantly, every single agency out there who is an Adobe Commerce agency needs to have so many developers who have that A certification on Adobe Commerce to make sure that they keep their status as an Adobe partner. So what that means as a developer is getting that certification makes you much more valuable in the ecosystem than somebody without a certification. I would even say with a certification is a great way to keep and maintain a job with a Magento agency because you are an important part of that. It's not to say that people who don't have a certification, and I'll be the first to admit that I let my certification lapse as a solution specialist, but it is a sign that you can put out that shows that you know something about what you're doing as a job, and specifically a Magento developer, to help you get a job and also have a higher paying job in the industry. So as specifically around the talent pool, there are again people out there that so I guess the question of the talent pool question is more towards, can we hire enough people, right? In then maybe the second part of that, can we hire enough people in the region that we need to hire those people? The maybe the short answer to that is that if you have a properly planned project, meaning that you have a great project management team that will scope that project and then and make sure that project is being delivered in say over a 3-month period, you can then make sure all that work is planned out and you're not dependent on anything being done the next day, which is the biggest thing in terms of time zone. If you're a developer working in a different time zone, there is always a challenge around, hey, this has to get done today, right? But if you've planned everything out properly, nothing is ever an emergency. So you as a developer, wherever you're sitting, if you're in Europe, or if you're in the US, or you're in Latin America, and you're in India, working with a great project management team is going to help you as a developer be a great developer. And I realize that doesn't help you to get the job, but knowing that you're at a place that has a great project management team will help you to be a better developer. And it's a really big question, so I don't know if should keep on going, but I think that answers that one specifically.
No, that was perfect, Brent. And let's just stop the questions over here, and obviously we will come back to the remaining questions. Let's talk about Magento market share. So where do you see Magento's market share in the next? I think you're the best person to ask this question from. Where do you see Magento's market share in the next 5 years or 10 years? Do you think that there is some sort of a threat for Magento when it comes to other CMSs or other page builders per se, that makes store building much more easier as compared to Magento? Do you think that may be an issue that Magento might face in the years coming forward?
Hey, let's face it, Magento is facing it and has faced it for the last 5 years. Magento used to be the largest platform. I know that Tom Robertshaw with Space 48 had a survey that he used to post back in the 2012s, 2013s. It showed the market share that Magento has over the rest of the market. The market share of Magento has drastically fallen as Shopify has increased and as other SaaS platforms has increased. So the threat to Magento is certainly the SaaS market. And then the next part of that is the fact that Adobe Commerce has removed the word Magento from nearly everything in the whole world. So other than the Magento Association, Adobe Commerce doesn't mention Magento much at all, which I feel really hurts the brand Magento. A lot of people know what Magento is, but a lot of people don't know what Adobe Commerce is, and they're automatically thinking Adobe Commerce is some expensive product, which it's not cheap, right? The other part of that is that the Adobe Commerce team typically looks at merchants that are $25 million and above, which means that they're just giving up that whole market segment to BigCommerce and Shopify and whoever else is out there. So which makes it more difficult to, as an agency, to find those clients that you would like to fit into that, right? I think the one thing that Magento or Adobe Commerce is doing right now is they are thinning down the core of Adobe Commerce and Magento to make it easier and less expensive to maintain over time. So the argument is that, for $29 a month, you can get a BigCommerce store, and you're probably going to spend $100. Cloudways can tell you how much you're going to spend on your hosting your Magento site, but you're going to spend probably more than $29 maintaining your Magento store just in hosting alone. So you also then have the quarterly or 3 times a year updates, like we just saw in 2.4.6, that have to get rolled into your current code base. Those things aren't automatic. If you're running a SaaS platform, you don't have to worry about any of that. Your site just runs and it keeps going, and they do their upgrades, and you never know they've done an upgrade, right? Even if you get the Magento Cloud or the Adobe Commerce Cloud version of Magento, you are still responsible for making sure those updates happen, which costs
Yeah.
money. So I think the nice part about what Adobe's doing is they're thinning it down. But what I mean by thinning it down is they are unbundling a lot of products that came within Magento. So think about third-party marketing, some
Mm-hmm.
payment gateways, some shipping, things like that. A lot of those products are getting unbundled and put into add-ons, right? So if you're doing an upgrade and your upgrade was dependent on some marketing platform, or it conflicts with a marketing platform, every time you did that, you have to worry about, how am I going to get around this these errors that I'm getting in my code, because my code competes against an existing code that I don't even use. So removing a lot of those things in Magento is going to make your ROI, is going to improve your ROI in your current store. The idea that you want to host your own store also has the advantage of that you own all that code, and you're not really, I mean, with Shopify, you're just leasing that code. The hidden cost in that $29 is that with Shopify, you are going to have to pay them for every single transaction and every single payment that you
Yeah.
have coming out of there. So
Yep.
there are no hidden costs in Magento, because you can choose however you want your clients to pay. Your clients can pay with a check, and they can send that
Yep.
check in. So you never have to pay anything on those. With something like Shopify, you
Yep.
are tied into that, and that really drives into where they make their money. And Shopify makes the majority of their money through payments.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I mean, it's not uncommon for CMSs or platforms to face competition from other newer technologies that have made things much easier. But obviously, as you said, they have hidden costs, and they tie you up in these things. And obviously, users are not always aware of these hidden costs. So with Magento, I think what the good part is that the freedom that comes with it, I think the control that comes with Magento, I think that's what sets Magento apart. But again, as you mentioned, that it's something that Magento is facing right now, the competition and the threat of being overtaken, or overtaken by newer technologies that are easier, and they cater to beginners who are not that tech savvy, who don't actually know how to create their own stores. So Shopify, as an example, obviously is something that is catering to those user base. So we have another question on Magento 2.4.6. So let's see what it says. What are the new features and updates in Magento 2.4.6, and how can I learn about them? So
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a whole list of features, and it's going to
yeah.
take me 20 minutes to go through it. I'll paste in the channel. I think I can paste it I'll put it in this chat window here, and people can go and read them on their own. There's a whole list of things that they've done from Adobe Commerce that would that they could read about, and I don't think we need to go into detail on that.
You can
There's
mention your favorite ones. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, there's nothing. There are no new features that are going to come from Adobe Commerce or Magento anymore. Maybe Adobe I/O, which is something that's Adobe is working on to help you build your own integrations using within the Adobe platform. There are more and more that are coming in. A lot of the features that were released are specific to Adobe Commerce. But some of the things like PHP versions, Elasticsearch, MariaDB are things that are part of it, but are only really platform enhancements, and well, of course, there's lots of security enhancements. For performance, there's I think I'm looking at 4 different performance updates that are there, but I think in general, you're not going to see any new features. Everything that Adobe's going to deliver is going to be as a service. So
Okay.
think about search. They have Adobe Search. There's Adobe Sensei.
Mhm.
All those features are going to be delivered as a SaaS. There's even a catalog service now that's available from Adobe that would allow you to split out your catalog from your store. So what you're going to see in every single new release is you're going to see fixes, you're going to see performance improvements, and you're going to see probably a better, you're going to see more GraphQL coverage, which they have quite a few of those here. And you'll see enhancement on some of the features within Adobe Commerce, and even those, when I mentioned that there's some updates in the B2B section of Magento, the updates were on GraphQL. So you're not going to see much more than that coming out of there. You will see more integrations with other Adobe products, I think. But other than that, you're not going to see anything new.
Okay. So Brent, that was the last question that we had, and I think we are reaching our time for this session today. So any last comments that you would like to make about Magento, or any tips that you would like to give to people who are just starting off their careers in Magento and want to, have a career like yourself with Magento?
Yeah, I'm going to just push back on that. Other things are easy, right? Since 2015, a colleague of mine and myself, Derek Harlick, have been doing a talk about how Magento is easy. And we actually set up a demo in a basement of a hotel in London in 2015 during UK Live. And we did a live demonstration of starting Magento from scratch and then selling something on Magento in that time frame that we did that. So just think about going to Cloudways and running the install on Magento 2, and then applying the basic themes, uploading a logo, and adding 10 products. We were able to do that in under an hour, and then have people buy. We had some T-shirts that we were just giving away, and we gave out a coupon code even. We even loaded a coupon. We were able to have people buy on their mobile phones in 2015. Think about that. That's 8 years ago. All within an hour. So I always want to give pushback, because I think that Shopify has such a great marketing engine that they've really pounded into people's heads that it's easy. And it's just as easy as Magento. All you have to do is use it. So the beauty of Magento is that you can do anything you want with it. But if you choose not to, it's the same as Shopify. You can run it the same way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much, Brent. We're just concluding our session for today. So thank you so much, Brent, for taking your time out and answer all these questions that we had from our users. And thank you all for attending the session today. We hope that you liked it. It was informative for you, and you learned a lot about Magento and the 2.4.6, the new release that just got launched. So thank you, Brent. Thank you, everyone. We will see you again with another AMA soon. Take care and bye-bye.
Thank you.